The Surrender Novena is one of the most powerful prayers I've ever prayed because you are giving everything over to God. You are taking all of your problems and you are saying, Lord, I have finally realized that I can't do everything on my own. I am nothing without you, Lord. I am only a human with human abilities, human weaknesses. I am frail. I have no real control over anything, even though I think I have control over everything. I am finally realizing this and I am turning to you and I am saying, Lord, I give this all to you because I trust you. I know you are God. I am handing over my free will to you. I know that your plans are better for me than my plans. God will radically change your life in the most effortless way. One thing I love about prayer and praying, and when you really give things over to God, is that God will take that thing that you gave him and he will transform it in the most effortless way. I've talked a lot about answered prayers because God has answered a lot of my prayers. I've been very blessed and fortunate to see the fruit of my prayers, my suffering. I've seen the fruit of things that I really didn't believe God had any power over, which is so silly because if you believe in God, if you say you believe in God, then you have to believe that God's the creator of everything and God has power and authority over everything. The Bible says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, this is out of Jesus's mouth. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, then you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. How pathetic is all of our faith that we're not moving mountains? When I finally hand over things that feel like mountains to me, things that are not actually mountains to God, but things that feel like mountains to me, God radically transforms them. Things that you think God can't do, that is nothing to God. Any problem you have is nothing to God. And God wants to help you in your problems. But often we think we're giving God our problems, but we're really just saying, God, I have all these problems. I'm so worried about them. And that's it. We never get to the step of, Lord, I am so worried about this problem. Has taken over my whole life. I'm constantly thinking about it and I don't want it. And I do not want this problem. So I need to give this to you. One of two things is going to happen. I have a story for you that I cannot wait to share in this video. I'm going to be sharing with you how God took a mountain in my life, a big mountain, something that was taking over my life for years. For many years, I really struggled in this area and God just in a moment took care of it for me and it was so beautiful and awesome. It was the first time I ever prayed this Surrender Novena. The Lord just absolutely radically changed something for me without me having to do anything and it was so awesome and I cannot wait to tell you. But first, I want to talk about that faith the size of a mustard seed. Like I said, one of two things are going to happen when you pray the Surrender Novena. When you pray the Surrender Novena, your life, God will radically change the situation, like the story I'm about to tell, or God will radically change how you feel about the situation. There's been so many big things I've prayed about that God did not actually change the situation for me. God did not actually do the thing I was asking him to do. But what he did was he changed how I felt about that thing. Because that might not sound that alluring to you. That might sound like, well, I don't want to change how I feel about this. I just want this fixed. But when God changes how you feel about something, it will fix the situation. Because you will not have the anguish that you once had over that situation. Perfect example. I was really struggling with my son's autism. I was really struggling with blaming myself. I'm going to make another video about all the things that I went through with just my heart and my emotions around my son's autism, but I was feeling really depressed over it. And I would go through these cycles of fixating on it, fixating on different things, feeling guilty, like I had done something wrong and this is why my son had autism. Or another thing that would go on is I am not a good enough mother because if I was a good enough mother, my child would be in a better place. Or I would start worrying about the future and things that I had no real control over. God radically changed how I felt about the whole thing. He, in one moment, changed everything for me. The weight of the cross that I was carrying, the constant thoughts that I was having, frustrations, the worry, the sadness, all of that went away. I was freed from that burden. So yes, my son still has autism, but I feel so much hope over the situation and not honestly that hope that things will change. I do hope that he'll grow in his skills and things will get better. I do hope for that. But I don't live in this misery anymore. I don't live in this shroud of sadness anymore. And that was a gift from God. I know that was a gift from God, and that was only something God could do because I was tormented for like 2 years with worry and cycles of worry. I feel free. And maybe I will struggle with it again, I don't know, but right now I am free. The Lord freed me, and I am going to live in that freedom, and I'm going to be grateful. So no matter what, if God answers your prayer by actually doing the thing or fixing the situation, or he answers your prayer by changing how you feel about the situation, or he might bless you in some way in that situation. Another example is, when I was pregnant with Oliver, I was really struggling with energy. I didn't have any help. I didn't have anyone I could turn to and be like, can you help me? Even if I got sick, it was my problem to deal with. I mean, unless my husband took off work and I was really that sick, but we need his income for us to survive. So I didn't have any help, and God brought in our babysitter Annie into my life. She was such an incredible blessing during that season. God will make a way. Where you think there is no way, God will make a way. Another thing I want to share about the Surrender Novena and surrendering to God is that we live in this society that really prides ourselves on self-reliance. Self-reliance is something that I am so guilty of, and it is actually a sin. I didn't know it was a sin until I started reading the Bible, and really the story of David. There's so many parts of the story of David that was very convicting for me, and I want to start leading Bible studies. First, I'm going to do the story of Jericho, and then I'm going to do the story of David, because both were extremely convicting for me and my faith, and talk about how God has you read certain things in the time that you're meant to read them, and really just allow the Holy Spirit to lead you where you're going to be led. And it's not always going to be mountaintop moments, but God will lead you. And the story of David specifically, I did not enjoy that much. It was more like, what is happening in this story? But so many things came through to me, and one of them was the sin of self-reliance. And one of the best part of the Surrender Novena is God is stripping you from self-reliance, and you're really handing some things over to the Lord and learning how terrible self-reliance is. Self-reliance is believing that you have control over everything. If you do all the right things, you will get whatever result you're looking for. And that's a lie. Yes, it is important. It is important to do the right thing. It is important to work towards whatever you're hoping to work towards. I'm not just saying lay in bed and let God do whatever, even though he could if you wanted him to, and if he was calling you to that. You should be taking action. You should do things that you feel prompted to do, but we should not be doing anything in our own power. It should all be led through God. And the way you let God lead in your life is you do the Surrender Novena. You pray the rosary every day. You read the Bible. You surround your life by filling your life with Christ. You constantly turn every moment to Christ. I'm going to make a whole video about how I live a Christ-centered life, like a little mini vlog of my actual day and how I pray continuously throughout the day. It has radically changed my life. There's so many ways that you can invite God in. You can make your life a prayer without having to live in a monastery. There was a time where little quick tangent, there was a time where I started feeling like maybe I had missed my calling and I should have been a cloistered nun, which is actually crazy. I would be a terrible cloistered nun, and I never felt called to be a nun before marriage, but once the chaos of family life got in and I never had quiet time to pray, that's all I craved and longed for. And so I really started to get in my head that maybe I had missed my calling to be a cloistered nun, and that I would really just love the life of praying all day. Meanwhile, if just the idea of getting up at 5 a.m. every day, I wouldn't make it a week in the cloister. They would kick me out. They say, you don't have a vocation, which I know I didn't. I know I was called to marriage and family life, and I love being a wife and a mother, but sometimes the idea of a peaceful existence, even though I know there's hardships that come with every vocation, the peaceful existence aspect of it was I started to long for that. That's how you know you have toddlers, when you think living in a cloister would be very easy. So now I'm going to tell you the story of how when I prayed the Surrender Novena, God radically changed everything for me. I was pregnant with my son, Theodore, and I was so sick in my pregnancy with Theodore. I was actually pretty sick in both my pregnancies, but not like I was with Theodore. When I was pregnant with my first son, I threw up continuously. I barely gained any weight that pregnancy. When I look back, I feel like I was thinner 9 months pregnant then than I am now, because I was so sick that whole pregnancy. I threw up my entire pregnancy, all 9 months, and on top of that, Food was disgusting to me. The thought of eating made me want to die. I felt better starving myself than eating, and that isn't my personality. I love food. I'm one of those people that like lives to eat. I don't eat to live. I live to eat. I could not eat my whole pregnancy with Theodore. It was horrible. My 3rd trimester, I developed this thing where everything smelled like gasoline to me. It was a real party. I was really sick, and I was also working at the time. I was working from home. Thank you, God. That alone was God's hand, because I could not have gone into an office. They would have had to let me work from home even if I was in a job where you had to go to the office, because I would be running to puke constantly, and people, like, I would have probably, like, I had accidents where I would puke in my house, like not making it to the bathroom. That's how bad it was. Like, it was horrible. I would have throbbing migraines. I was so miserable. During that season, God was so good to me. I worked in sales. I worked in software sales, and I hit all of my numbers while I was pregnant, which is a miracle because I was so sick. And just like the right deals would come to me. It was, and I knew it was God. I knew it wasn't me, because the year before that and the year before that, I like, especially my first year, I like hustled my butt off, and just the right deals never came. And then I'm still working, but not even close to what I was doing that first year. And I would just have the right opportunities. When you talk to someone, when you work in sales, you know when you're having a conversation where like the person is 100% serious and gonna buy. And I would have these awesome deals where things were just falling into place. But I had a boss that put a lot of pressure on me. Even though I was hitting all my goals, he was really making me concerned for my job. He had already been my boss like the year before, and then I had gotten moved off his team, but he had put me on what is like considered like a performance, like the first step to getting fired, basically. Like a lot of jobs can't just fire you. So the first step to getting fired is being put on this like performance plan where you have to do all this extra work to prove that you're worthy of keeping your job. So I had already been put on a plan by this boss. And the only reason he couldn't put me on a plan when I was pregnant with Teddy was because I was making all my numbers by the grace and mercy of God. The minute I was put back on his team, which I was like, God, why did you put me back on this person's team when I know that they don't like me, and I know that we'll just say I didn't feel that he was on my side or for me or trying to help me in any way. The only reason I didn't get put back on a performance plan was because I kept making my numbers. So he couldn't report me for anything, because what is he gonna say? I'm making my numbers. That was God's hand. Then I'm still working under this person, and he's causing me anguish. Like, I know he's looking to catch me in something and looking to fire me. And I was like above board. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, but I was also pretty miserable. It was really hard for me. Like, I only could do meetings for certain hours because I was so sick throughout my pregnancy. Like, the morning, there was no way I could do a meeting. When I was in meetings, I wouldn't put my screen on because I was so sick. I literally looked like a troll. Like, I looked like I was someone under a bridge, but I only had the energy to work. Like, I couldn't make myself look like a person and work. That would have been too much for my energy. And only if you've had a really hard pregnancy can you understand what a hard pregnancy is like. Because I had another manager that I was like trying to advocate to about the situation, because I was really, really sick. And she was like trying to be understanding, but she had never had a pregnancy like that. And I think she thought I was being dramatic, and I was not. I was not. Honestly, I should have been put on disability. That's how bad it was. I look back on that situation and I feel so sorry for myself. Not sorry for myself, but I have compassion for myself, because I was really worse than you really could imagine. Just terribly ill. From our conversations, I could tell he was like fishing for things. Like, he'd be asking me very pointed questions. I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, but it doesn't matter if you're not doing anything wrong. If someone's looking for something, they'll find something whether you're doing it or not. You know? I just was constantly praying about this situation and really just frustrated over the situation, really scared. And I just did not want to be fired right before my maternity leave. I had worked at this company for 3 years, and I got a 6-month paid maternity leave, and I did not want to lose that 6-month paid maternity leave. I felt like I had earned it, and I did not want to get fired right before I was going to go on this maternity leave. I was in adoration one day praying to God about the situation. I never saw this person. I never saw them put it on my chair, but they put the pamphlet for the Surrender Novena on my chair. How cool, right? Like, I had never even heard of the Surrender Novena, I think, before that, but they put it on my chair, and I was like, okay, that's a sign. I need to pray this Surrender Novena. So I prayed the surrender novena about that situation, about my pregnancy, about everything. Like, there was just so much going on at that season in my life. The last few years have been very jam-packed. I surrendered that situation over to God. And I really, honestly, all I wanted from that surrender novena was just for me to keep my job and be able to make it to my maternity leave. That's all I wanted. But God had better plans for me, and what he did was the craziest thing. So this manager from another team, another department of my company, had been looking to fill a seat in his team, and he wanted to pick someone that he knew that he had worked with. And I knew him from the office. We had gotten hired around the same time. I did not know he was like a big deal, and I was very friendly with him just because I'm a friendly person. But I feel like I might not have been as comfortable with him had I realized like what a big deal he was. But he was managing over this team, and he was looking for someone to hire, and he had seen through the emails that I was making my numbers, and he wanted me for his team. So he basically reached out to me and told me he wanted me for his team. I still had to go through an interview process. I actually worked with other old coworkers that had been on his team to prepare myself for the interviews and stuff, but it was also one of those things where I knew he wanted me, so I knew it wasn't going to be as hard. Like, it's one of those things where it's like you have to work for something, but you also know it's going to work out if you do the work. And that was immediately what I felt like. And I knew he would be an awesome boss. I hadn't heard nothing but, like, he was such a down-to-earth person that he never put on bravado in the office. And I don't know if you've ever worked in sales, but there can be a lot of bravado going on. And he was not like that. He was a very humble, kind person. And he was so good to me. Right before my third trimester, I transferred to this person's team. And he was so good to me in my third trimester. And I was basically like a beach whale. I would nap on the floor of my office in my house because I would like be in between meetings, but I was so exhausted at that point and so just barely alive that I would nap on the floor of my office in between meetings, in between calls. And he was so good to me, and he treated me so well, and I should pray for him more because he was such a good person, and he made the last leg of my pregnancy manageable, and I wasn't afraid for my job anymore, and I knew it was all going to be okay, and God was going to take care of me. I'm just so grateful to God for God taking care of that whole situation. It was like from a nightmare to just like I knew I was in the promised land. I knew I could finally exhale. And the last leg of my pregnancy, the worst, hardest part of my pregnancy, well, not the worst, hardest, because the first trimester was very hard, but like the end was so much more doable because I didn't have the extra stress. That is like another thing where sometimes I'll beat myself up, or I used to beat myself up with my son's autism because I was like, maybe it was all the stress I was under during that pregnancy that made everything so much worse and maybe caused his autism. You know, there's all these things where I start to like question, but because that person was such an awesome person to work for and took so much stress off my plate, like I really was able to breathe a sigh of relief at the end of my pregnancy. That was all the hand of God. Me making my numbers was the hand of God, but me getting switched off that team was the hand of God. Honestly, what was even more incredible was like I got this promotion basically. It was a promotion, it was a better position, it was a higher paying position. Then that meant I got more money when I was on maternity leave. So God just like totally took care of me in that whole situation. That was God's blessing over our family. And I need to even like hearing this story is giving me confidence about things that I'm struggling with even now. It's like God really will take care of you and your family if you give everything over to him. I love the surrender novena. I actually did a pray along surrender novena. I did the 9 days, 9 videos for each day for the surrender novena. It's such an easy novena to pray, so I will link that playlist down in the description box below, and I highly encourage you to pray with me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you know someone that needs encouragement, please share this video with them or another one of my testimonials with them. I truly believe when you are faithful to God, God is faithful to you. God is always looking to be there for us, but often we're not turning to him and allowing him to intervene.